100,000 years ago, the world was dominated by creatures far stronger than us. Giant lions, mammoths, perfect predators. We weren't kings. We weren't gods. We were just another species trying to survive. And yet, in just a few tens of thousands of years, this ordinary species came to dominate the entire planet. So what happened? If we go back in time, Homo sapiens was not impressive. We couldn't run fast, we couldn't fight well, we had no thick fur, no sharp teeth. We were vulnerable. In Africa, where we first appeared, humans lived at the edge of the food chain. We were not top predators. We were prey. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans barely changed the ecosystem at all. We were invisible. And then, something changed. Not a physical revolution, not a visible mutation, but a shift inside the mind, a silent revolution. The cognitive revolution. Humans began to think differently, not just to observe the world, but to imagine it. Animals communicate, but their communication is limited. A monkey can say, "Watch out, lion," but it cannot say, "Tomorrow let's hunt the lion near the river." Animals communicate, but their communication is limited. Human language became something entirely different, complex, flexible, creative. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about plans, strategies, and stories. But the real revolution wasn't language itself. It was the ability to talk about things that don't exist. Myths, spirits, gods. For the first time in history, humans began living in two realities, the physical world and an imagined one. And that changed everything, because it made something possible that had never existed before. Large-scale cooperation. Thousands, even millions of people working together for the same idea. A nation exists only because people believe in it. Money has value only because we all agree it does. Laws exist only because they are collectively accepted. But this power comes with a cost, because the same stories that unite us can also divide us. Religions, ideologies, nations. Humans don't fight for truth. They fight for the stories they believe in. The cognitive revolution didn't just change how we think. It changed reality itself. Because the world we live in today is not built from rivers or mountains, but from ideas. If you disappeared tomorrow, the world would go on. But if humanity stopped believing in the same shared ideas, everything would collapse. Because our reality is not just physical, it is imagined. Think of Homo sapiens as a product launched into the market of nature. The lion, raw power. The eagle, precision and vision. The shark, a perfect killing machine. The human, weak, slow, vulnerable. If nature were a store, no one would choose us. And then, we got an upgrade. Not hardware, software. The cognitive revolution was a system update, version 2.0 of the human mind. Language wasn't just communication anymore. It became the first social network in history. Today, we have apps like Facebook or X. But 70,000 years ago, language was the internet. And surprisingly, one of its most important functions wasn't hunting. It was gossip. Who can you trust? Who cheats? Who is dangerous? These stories allowed groups to function. And honestly, nothing has changed. A company doesn't physically exist. You can't touch it. And yet, it can control your life. Apple, Google, Amazon. These are shared fictions, stories that millions of people believe in. Take a banknote. It's just paper. But if everyone agrees it has value, it becomes real. Today, it doesn't even need to exist physically. It's just numbers in a system, like Bitcoin. A country doesn't exist in nature. There are no real lines on the earth. And yet, people are willing to die for them. No other animal can organize millions of strangers. Humans can. Your phone is built by thousands of people who will never meet. The more we believe in shared stories, the more powerful we become. But also, the more fragile. Because if tomorrow people stop believing in money, the global economy would collapse. The cognitive revolution wasn't just a moment in the past. It is the reason we live in this world. A world built not from reality, but from belief. And the question is, if all of this is just stories, what is truly real? For millions of years, humans lived as hunter-gatherers, free, flexible, always moving. They didn't have jobs. They didn't have bosses. They didn't wake up to alarms or live by strict schedules. They hunted, they gathered, they explored, and in many ways, their lives were more balanced than ours today. Humans made a decision that would reshape the entire future of our species. They began to cultivate the land. At first glance, it seems like progress. More food, more stability, a better life. But what if it wasn't? What if the agricultural revolution was actually one of the biggest traps in human history? Before agriculture, humans didn't work 10 hours a day. They didn't have careers. They didn't live under constant pressure. Their diet was diverse. Their lifestyle adaptable. Agriculture didn't begin because humans became smarter. It began because they wanted more food. And that small decision changed everything. Because growing crops requires effort. You have to clear the land, plant the seeds, wait for the harvest. And once you invest that much, you can't just walk away. You become tied to the land, dependent. There's an idea that sounds strange at first. Humans didn't domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated humans. Think about it. Wheat can't move. It can't defend itself. It can't spread on its own very efficiently. And yet, it took over vast areas of the planet. Not because it evolved, but because it changed human behavior. Humans began to work longer hours, settle in one place, depend entirely on harvest cycles. Their lives became harder, not easier. It's like upgrading your life, but becoming more stressed, more dependent, and less free. Sound familiar? Today we have more comfort than ever, but less time, more stress, more pressure. The pattern hasn't changed. Agriculture allowed populations to grow, more food, more people. But that created a new cycle. More people, more food needed, more work required. And that cycle never stopped. For the first time in history, humans began living in permanent settlements, villages, then cities, and with them came entirely new problems. Repetitive labor, hierarchies, control. For the first time, humans were no longer equal. Some owned land, others worked for them. Power began to concentrate. And once societies became larger, they needed structure, organization, systems. That's when new tools appeared. Writing, taxes, laws. Not ideas, but systems to manage complexity. And those systems are still with us today. Think about companies like Amazon or McDonald's. They coordinate millions of people across the entire planet. That level of organization started with agriculture. But plants weren't the only ones domesticated. Animals were too. And for them, the agricultural revolution was a disaster. Industrial-scale control, limited movement, lives shaped entirely by human needs. Humans gained more power, but individual lives often became more difficult. More work, more disease, more dependency, and the most surprising part? No one planned it. No one said, "Let's work harder forever." It happened slowly, step by step. Each decision made sense on its own, but together, they created a system that was almost impossible to escape. Today, we believe we are free, but in many ways, we are still living inside that system. We wake up, we work, we consume, and repeat. The agricultural revolution wasn't about making humans happier. It was about increasing the power of the species. And for the first time in history, humans didn't fully control the system anymore. The system began to control them. For thousands of years, humans lived in separate worlds, small tribes, isolated communities, different realities, each with its own rules, its own beliefs, its own truth. There was no single world, no shared humanity. But slowly, almost invisibly, something began to change. A force started connecting people, not a natural force, but one created by the human mind. Humans didn't unite because they loved each other more. They united because they began to believe in the same stories. One of the most powerful of these stories was religion. Religion wasn't just belief, it was a system. It created order, it defined rules, it gave meaning to chaos. For the first time, millions of people could follow the same laws, even if they never met. It didn't matter who you were, it mattered what you believed. Before large-scale religions, the world was fragmented. Thousands of tribes, thousands of local gods, thousands of conflicting beliefs. There was no universal standard, but religion changed that. It introduced something new, universal order, a set of rules that applied not just to a village, but to entire civilizations. What is good? What is evil? What is allowed? What is forbidden? For the first time, behavior could be standardized across massive populations. Large religions didn't just shape beliefs, they shaped empires. The Roman Empire, for example, was transformed when it adopted Christianity. What began as a small religious movement became a unifying force across vast territories. Laws, identity, and power became linked to belief. Centuries later, Islamic empire spread across continents, uniting diverse cultures under a shared religious framework, different languages, different traditions, but one belief system. And that belief system made cooperation possible on a massive scale. Religion worked because it solved a fundamental problem: trust. In small groups, trust is personal, but in large societies, you can't know everyone. So how do you trust strangers? Religion provided the answer. Not through evidence, but through shared belief. If both of you believe that lying is wrong, that theft is punished, that actions have consequences beyond this life, then cooperation becomes possible, even between complete strangers. But religion did something even more powerful. It created an authority that no human could challenge. Kings could be questioned, leaders could be overthrown. But divine law? That was absolute. Because it didn't come from humans, it came from something higher, something eternal, something unquestionable. And that made religion one of the most stable systems in history. But this power came with a price. Because the same beliefs that unite people can also divide them. Different religions, different truths, different versions of reality. And when beliefs clash, conflict becomes inevitable. Wars have been fought not over resources, but over ideas, over meaning, over truth, over whose story is the real one. Even today, religion continues to shape the world. It influences politics, laws, identity. It defines communities and divides them. And even in a modern scientific world, billions of people still organize their lives around religious belief. Religion is not just about faith, it is about structure. It is about creating order in a chaotic world. It is about allowing millions of people to cooperate without ever knowing each other. But religion was only one part of the system, because belief alone is not enough to run a complex world. For that, humanity needed something else, something even more universal, something that didn't depend on culture or tradition, but worked everywhere. Money. Money is, perhaps, the most successful system of trust ever created. It has no intrinsic value. You can't eat it. It can't protect you. And yet, it controls the world because humans collectively decided to believe in it. A complete stranger can give you a product and you give them money, and both of you trust that the exchange makes sense. This is cooperation between people who have nothing in common except belief. Today, money has evolved even further. It's no longer paper. It's data, numbers, code. Systems like Bitcoin show just how far this idea can go. At its core, money isn't about reality. It's about trust. But neither religion nor money would have been enough on their own. There was a third force: empires. Unlike religion or money, empires didn't unite people through agreement. They united them through power, conquest, control, domination. Empires expanded across continents, absorbing cultures, reshaping societies. One of the most influential examples was the Roman Empire. What began as a small city grew into a system that controlled millions, not just through military force, but through infrastructure. Roads, laws, administration. A person in one part of the empire could interact with someone thousands of kilometers away under the same system. That was revolutionary. It created a shared framework, a common reality. Centuries later, new empires emerged, more powerful, more global. The British Empire became one of the largest in history. It didn't just control land, it controlled trade, resources, entire economies. Regions in Asia, Africa, and the Americas were connected into a single global system. Goods moved across oceans, ideas spread between continents. But this expansion came at a cost. Colonization meant exploitation, forced labor. Destruction of local cultures, entire societies were reshaped, often violently. And yet, paradoxically, empires also connected the world. They built trade networks, established global routes, enabled cultural exchange. They created the first version of a globalized world. This is the paradox of human history. The same forces that divide people also unite them. Religion can create peace or conflict. Money can enable cooperation or exploitation. Empires can connect civilizations or destroy them. Today, we live in the result of this process. A single, interconnected system. Almost every person on Earth is part of the same global network, the same economic rules, the same underlying structures, the same types of imagined realities. Differences still exist, but the framework is shared. And this process hasn't stopped. It's accelerating. Technology is pushing it forward. Instant communication, global trade, digital systems. Everything is becoming more connected, more dependent, more unified. But there's a risk. When everything is connected, every problem becomes global. A financial crisis in one country can affect the entire world. A single idea can influence millions. A story can unite or destroy. Humanity was not unified by truth. It was unified by belief, shared stories, religions, money, empires. These are not just historical concepts. They are the foundation of the modern world. And this leads to a deeper question. If everything is built on belief, what happens when people stop believing? Because history shows one thing clearly: no story lasts forever. And the world we live in today is just the latest version of a story that has been evolving for thousands of years. For thousands of years, humans believed they understood the world. They had answers for everything: why it rains, why people suffer, what our place is in the universe. Everything was explained through stories. But around 500 years ago, something changed again. Not a revolution of the body, not a revolution of agriculture, but a revolution of ignorance. For the first time in history, humans began to say, "We don't know." And that moment changed everything. The scientific revolution didn't begin with answers. It began with questions. What is the universe? How does nature really work? And most importantly, what don't we know yet? This recognition of ignorance became the most powerful idea in history. Because once you accept that you don't know, you can begin to learn. Science is not just knowledge. It is a method, a way of approaching reality, based on observation, experimentation, constant doubt, not blind belief, not tradition, verification, again and again. If something is wrong, it gets replaced. Truth is not fixed, it evolves. But science didn't grow on its own. It needed two things: money and power. Research is expensive. Exploration is expensive. Discovery is expensive. And empires were willing to pay, not out of pure curiosity, but for advantage, for control, for dominance, for power. Explorers didn't cross oceans just to understand the world. They did it for gold, for land, for influence. But in the process, something bigger happened. The world became measurable, not just interpreted, but analyzed. Nature stopped being a mystery and became a system. And once something can be understood, it can be controlled. That is the real power of science. Not just explaining reality, but changing it. In just a few centuries, humans went from animal-drawn carts to engines, airplanes, and space travel. From untreated diseases to modern medicine. From survival to control over nature itself. Human power didn't just grow, it exploded. But this power creates a problem. Science answers one question very well: what can we do? But it cannot answer, what should we do? We can build more powerful weapons, but should we use them? We can manipulate life, but where is the limit? Today, this question is more real than ever. Artificial intelligence, systems that can think, decide, and act. Genetic engineering. The ability to modify life itself. These are not future ideas. They are happening now. And here lies one of the greatest tensions of the modern world. The gap between knowledge and wisdom. Between progress and consequences. Science gives us power, but not direction. The more we understand, the more we can destroy. For the first time in history, humanity has the power to reshape ecosystems, influence the entire planet, define the future of life, not just adapt to the world, but redesign it. Humans are no longer just a species that evolves. We have become a species that creates. We create technologies, systems, realities. And now we may begin to create new forms of intelligence. The scientific revolution is not over. It is accelerating, faster than ever. We are approaching a point where we don't just understand the world, we redefine it. And that leads to the most important question of all. What do we want to become? Because for the first time in history, the answer is no longer decided by evolution. It is decided by us.